Most tax pros leave a message.
It's Jane. I'm moving on to a TurboTax expert who beat your price. Adam Devine, tell him how I feel.
Hey, tax pro, she's been thinking twice. Best believe TurboTax will beat your price. This is a tax break.
Switch to a TurboTax Live expert and we'll beat what you paid your pro last tax season. Make the switch at TurboTax.com/beat your price. TurboTax full service only. Sign up by 12/20/2024 and file by 4/1/2025. Full details at TurboTax.com/beat your price.
This is the sound of your ride home with Dad after he caught you vaping. Awkward, isn't it? Most vapes contain seriously addictive levels of nicotine and disappointment. Know the real cost of vapes. Brought to you by the FDA.
ABC Wednesdays.
Y'all complain all day. We want books. We want paper towels in the classroom. Bet you want raises, too.
I'm still waiting on the paper towels.
Abbott Elementary returns with a new season.
We asked the district for more after-school programs. They gave us $50 for class pets instead.
Critics cheer. Abbott Elementary continues to be one of the funniest and most beloved shows on TV.
What y'all doing out there? Taking bribes? Proud of y'all.
Abbott Elementary, Wednesdays, 9:30, 8:30 Central on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Audiophiles around the world will speak endlessly about the perfection of analog. Just because it's old doesn't mean it can't work just as well. At least, that's what I keep telling myself. But can you stop an extraterrestrial invading force with nothing more than some crank wheel motors, vacuum tubes, and some naval machismo? Find out as we attempt to prove to you that American Warships is not that bad. Welcome, one and all to It's Not That Bad, the podcast that looks for A grades in B movies and a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Hello to all of our listeners in Nuremberg, Germany, and around the world. We are continuing our Mocktober celebration by taking a look at a film that is a mockbuster of a film that probably wasn't good enough to have a mockbuster made out of it anyways. We're talking about American Warships, which is a mockbuster of Battleship. And when the highlight of your movie says, starring the guy who once played Gambit and Rihanna, maybe not necessarily the film you want to be mimicking or at least homaging. But here we are. It's in the middle of Mocktober, and we're going to do this anyways. And here to join me, my mom is back. Hey, Mom, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Not too bad. So now you, like me, and to your listeners, this explains why I'm as broken as I am, happen to like a good old-fashioned B-rated movie. So when the idea, the concept of Mocktober came up, and I listed the movies that we were going to be covering this month, and you were like, I'm in. Why are you so broken?
I just love movies. And I got that from your grandmother. Although she probably would not have picked some of my selections, but you know.
Oh, I see how it is. So you rebelled against, yeah, okay, I get it now. It all makes sense. Just because, you know, the films are like doesn't mean they have to be good films. But we're about to go down yet another mockbuster road with American Warships. And before I even get to the notations on this one, we were almost talking about a very different film because this film was almost titled American Battleships. But then, of course, Universal said, yeah, I don't think so. Threatened to sue, and we got American Warships, which makes it just as good / bad. But before we go down this yet another asylum movie road, it is time to take American Warships and trailerize it.
Battle fleets and small islands are under attack from an unseen enemy. Their technology is useless, which explains the bad CGI. Now, one ship, captained by Mario Van Peebles, is humanity's last hope. Can this badass become the guardian of the world on a solo mission with a posse of hotshot soldiers stitched together, get a clear shot at preventing Judgment Day? This Trailerize has been brought to you and approved by the filmography of Mario Van Peebles. From the mind behind Sharknado, journey once again out to sea for American Warships. Rated TV-14 for throwaway VHS.
I didn't realize how many movies Mario Van Peebles had in his filmography. We named about at least 7 or 8 of them in that trailer eye. So now you know what to look for if you're in for a Mario Van Peebles-a-thon. Is that a thing now? Mario Van Peebles-a-thon? Maybe in the Van Peebles house. But let's get into who is in this film. The movie stars Mario Van Peebles, as you probably guessed, Carl Weathers, Joanna Watts, Nikki McCauley, Devin McGee, Elijah Chester, David Polinsky, and Sean Patrick Smith. It is written and directed by, and this name is real, Thunder Levin. This is the guy behind the Sharknado films, and yet we're back out here in the water. Thunder Levin literally just sounds like some kind of wrestler name. Like, oh, Thunder Levin's going to bring the smackdown on you. Like, oh, no, we're not going down that road. We're not making Thunder Levin a wrestler, even though it's either a wrestler name or a porno name, one of the two. The movie, of course, was released by the Asylum. After this film was released, though, and according to IMDb, this is true, the Chinese embassy actually released a statement saying this movie was, quote unquote, a perfect example of American propaganda gone wrong. I'm sorry, this is an example of what happens when American movie making goes wrong, not necessarily propaganda. There is a quote, though, apparently from this statement that says, "You cannot have Apollo Creed as a general. It doesn't make sense. He died in Rocky IV." I'm sorry, have you not movied before? This is apparently a thing. Like, how can you, in good conscience and right frame of mind, say the Asylum has released a film called American Warships? We need to counter. We need to make sure that the world knows that this movie isn't serious. As if the words brought to you by the Asylum wasn't. How? Have you never mockbustered before? Chinese embassy, please explain to me. Can you imagine having to write that down?
No.
Like, in all seriousness, can you imagine sitting there going, we cannot let this movie go uncommented upon? And say something about Rocky IV. That's the only Carl Weathers thing we know. Like, really? Did you not watch Predator? Come on.
Apparently not.
Also, still sad that Apollo Creed died in Rocky IV, which coincidentally Rocky IV does actually qualify for this podcast, and I would defend that film with my life, much like I would defend Apollo Creed as a general. The movie had a budget of $1 million, and there's no box office because, of course, this went straight to DVD and straight to streaming. However, the reason why we are here, and not just because I got to talk about a Chinese embassy statement about an Asylum film like it takes it seriously, but it's the critics. Now, over on Rotten Tomatoes, the film does not have an official tomatometer because apparently the critics are cowards and won't actually watch this film. But we're here and we're going to take that challenge. The popcorn meter on Rotten Tomatoes sits at 12%. Over at IMDb, it sits at 2.8 stars out of 10, giving it a 28% score. At Letterboxd, it has 2.6 stars out of 5, giving this a 56% score. And at the movie database, it sits at 35%, giving this mockbuster an aggravated aggregate of 32.75%. So before we go any further, when I ask you about a mockbuster, and I expected the critic scores to be ridiculously low. I'm not surprised by that at all. But this film, surprisingly, the audience isn't that. It's not as harsh. Like, they actually didn't seem to mind this film. Are you shocked by this?
No, not at all, because I didn't mind this film at all. Does it have its faults? Oh, yes, there's plenty we could pick apart. But overall, it was not that bad.
I need to point this out, okay? And maybe this is because it is an Asylum film. And when you when you sit down to purposely watch an asylum film, clearly what the Chinese embassy did, you take a lot of things with a grain of salt. You're not expecting world-breaking CGI. You're not expecting the biggest names in Hollywood to be in these films, even though, Mario Van Peebles and Carl Weathers, they're no acting slouches. These are actually pretty decent names and pretty decent actors. And, I say Carl Weathers, he is very dearly departed because he was freaking awesome. But I want to put this into perspective here. You go back to Letterboxd, and I said that it has a 2.6 out of 5 star rating. Remember, Letterboxd is voted on by people on Letterboxd. So these are viewers. These aren't critics. These are viewers. Battleship has a lower rating on Letterboxd than the mockbuster that it birthed, sitting at 2.1 stars for a 42% rating in comparison to the 56% that American Warships got.
Wow, I find that very surprising.
I'm not.
Really?
I'm
because
not.
I didn't dislike Battleship either.
No, I didn't dislike Battleship either, and I know there's going to come a day when we talk about Battleship on the show, and I'm here for it. But the thing is, when you take a large property like Battleship, and you put a fairly a really good cast into that film, I'll joke around about Taylor Kitsch and Rihanna, but you have Alexander Skarsgård in here as well. You have some really good actors, and I will say that Taylor Kitsch, one of the best parts of X-Men Origins Wolverine. So kudos where kudos are, and freaking Liam Neeson and Brooklyn Decker. Like there are some good actors in the film, and you also had a very high budget because of course there's a lot of CG in that film. But that puts the weight of expectation on a film. You put the budget of Battleship as opposed to a $1 million budget American Warships. Like, you're basically trying to justify comparing something that you got at auction or at a convention and you're paying top dollar to the dollar store knockoff. And this is what it is, right? This is the dollar store knockoff of the real deal. And, it's like in in Coming to America, you can eat at McDonald's or you can eat at McDonough's, and you could damn sure that the food's not going to be as good at McDonald's. But I'm surprised, but not surprised that the audience score for American Warships is higher than the actual film Battleship. And I think it's because there's a joyous celebration about B movies. And you kind of take it and go, oh, that's cute. They tried so hard.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. And that's why we love watching B movies.
Oh, absolutely.
Sometimes even C and D movies, because sometimes the worse they are, the more fun they are.
Oh, some of them are just straight up unintentionally funny, and that is brilliant.
Yep.
This one, though, I can't even say it's unintentionally funny because of the films that we've covered in Mocktober so far, this one's actually pretty damn good. And I'm kind of surprised by this. Like this was one of those ones that, halfway through, I'm like, why am I enjoying this so much?
Well, when you stop and think that one of Thunder Levin's previous movies.
No, if you're going to say that name, it's like one of
Thunder Levin. Well, one of his previous movies was the Mutant Vampire Zombies from the Hood. You really didn't expect much out of American Warships, so it was a pleasant surprise.
Which, for the record, if we ever have to cover that film, I am so lining up for that one because that just sounds like way too much fun. I'm sure it qualifies.
I would not doubt that for a minute.
I am really I'm almost scarily intrigued as to what would actually possess someone to make a film called, and what was the title again?
Mutant Vampire Zombies from the Hood.
Mutant Vampire Zombies from the Hood. Which, as I'm looking at this right now, and I'm
poor thing.
I'm very curious here. Again, no official tomatometer, but a popcorn meter of 36%, which means that mutant vampire zombies from the hood rates higher than American Warships.
Oh my God. But then there are a lot of people out there who love zombie movies, so anything with the word zombie in it is going to get their attention.
Okay, but understand that we're not just talking about zombie films. We're not just talking about vampire films. We are talking about, and I have to say this again, mutant vampire zombies from the hood. Like, you literally just had a word salad of geekdom just spew out onto the page, threw C. Thomas Howell into the cast and said, all right, let's go.
Exactly.
Thunder Living.
Oh, it's such a clutch off-season pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
Shop Blinds.com right now and get up to 45% off select styles. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Reporting live from under my blanket, I'm Susan Curtis with Duncan at Home. Breaking news, pumpkin spice iced and hot coffees are back. I'll pass it to Mr. Curtis with his blanket for the full story.
That is so right, Susan. You know, it's never too early to get in a spicy mood. I'm talking cinnamony goodness that's so tasty, people don't want to leave their blankets either. Back to you.
No, back to you.
All you.
The home with Dunkin' Pumpkin Spice is where you want to be.
Meaningless stuff. Why do we gift so much meaningless stuff? Tired of generic gifts and hollow trends? Shutterfly allows you to create meaningful photo gifts for your family and friends. Whether it's a cozy fleece blanket for grandma, a stunning canvas print for mom, or a mug to make dad smile. Enjoy 40% off with code MAKE40 at Shutterfly.com and make something meaningful this year. See site for more details.
All right, let's get back to American Warships before we completely and utterly diatribe here and find out why this film was actually much better than we could possibly expect. And we start with Mario Van Peebles. It's part of the Mario Van Peebles-a-thon as Captain Winston. Your thoughts?
It was a pretty decent performance. I think I would have liked to have seen a little bit more emotion, but I think the character was written, he had to be the calm, confident captain, the one to lead the way. But it would have been nice to have been seen a little more facial expression.
Yeah, he clearly kind of hit the budget as far as how many emotions he was allowed to use as part of the $1 million budget.
Probably.
And that emotion was one. Yeah. But the thing is, at first, in the first half of the film, I'm like, okay, this is a very locked in. This is the only emotion you're going to get, and there's zero depth to the character whatsoever. But then they start adding little things. And by the way, we're talking American Warships. And so if you haven't seen it by now, spoilers like a mofo, but it's American Warships. You probably weren't going to watch it anyways, but we did for you, so you're welcome. But as they drop little things here from different characters, it kind of explained why Captain Winston was the way he was. I halfway through, before we started to get some of those revelations, I was like, oh my God, this is as bad as Jaleel White in Mega Shark versus Crocosaurus.
Oh, dear.
Which, yes, I've watched that. The funny thing is, Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus, which, by the way, dear listeners, was episode 1 of this podcast, because, we like to live dangerously. But Mega Shark versus Crocosaurus, there isn't a single likable character in that film because they didn't give anything nice or likable about the characteristics. Captain Winston comes off as very, not raw military, but very one emotion all the way through. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, whoa. He's in a relationship with Lieutenant Carolyn Bradley? Okay. And then it's revealed that he keeps everyone at arm's distance because, only refers to them by their rank. So he doesn't, so he can make those hard decisions. Like, okay, now we're explaining a bit more. And then once we realize that his first officer actually knows about the relationship but keeps it locked down, that actually shows a level of trust in some of his officers. And it's like, okay, so maybe Captain Winston is a little bit of a deeper character than you would initially expect in the first half of the film. Well, after all that was revealed, I'm like, okay, I don't mind Captain Winston, and I don't mind Mario Van Peebles' performance in that role because it's, for lack of a better term, it's monotone. And I say that because that's what the character is written to be on purpose. It's a monotone performance because of the way it's written and because of the other characters around and because of the modus operandi of how Captain Winston operates and runs his ship. It makes sense. And once you realize that's what you needed to do with Megashark versus Crocosaurus. You needed to give Jaleel White's character reason to be as unlikable or as uncharismatic as he was. Mario Van Peebles had reason to not emote. And at least I'm glad he wasn't straight up rah. Like, he didn't make this feel like a Michael Bay film. And that's a good thing.
Oh, thank God.
I mean, they could have done with some Michael Bay level of explosions. I'm not going to lie, but
yeah, that wouldn't fit in $1 million budget.
No, it wouldn't. No. I mean, yeah, you can get some stock footage and make things look like that. But it wasn't so over the top, and there were good moments in this, and it didn't lean into the, for lack of a better term, military porn.
Yeah. I mean, they tried that a little bit with the Navy SEALs. I'm still not understanding quite why they were on board, but they were there. A little more hoorah from them, but which I don't think you would actually see out of Navy SEALs. But there you go.
and more to the point, you wouldn't necessarily be transferring them across the ocean on a ship that's going to become a museum. It's like, just in case.
Maybe it was just the Navy saving money.
Like the production company. Gotcha. Joanna Watts, who played Lieutenant Carolyn Bradley. Your thoughts on her?
Okay, but I would have liked to have seen more out of her. But, it sort of ties into what you were saying about Mario Van Peebles, the standoffish, needing to cover up a relationship in her case. But it was a bit flat. I found her performance a bit flat.
See, I'm going to argue that one because I didn't mind her in this. And I say that because there's the moments when like everyone's popping on the bridge and trying to chime in with their thoughts and all that. And of course, like, the captain is shutting them all down and, enforcing that military protocol on everybody. And you could see that, almost like the taken aback look from Lieutenant Bradley at that. And then once you realize that they're in a relationship, it's like, okay, well, that makes a lot of sense at that point. Then there's the point where Captain Winston says that he's going to marry her, right? And you could see like the restraint, like, I'm not going to cry, but I'm happy, but I'm not going to cry. And then he shifts gear and, says, no, I need more intelligence kind of thing. Like there are emotions. I mean,
there are bits and pieces.
Yeah.
But there could have been more.
And I think that's more on the writing side of things because this was very much a Mario Van Peebles vehicle. Mm-hmm. Lieutenant Bradley was there not just to act the part of naval intelligence, but also to humanize Captain Winston. And it's unfortunate because if you need a character solely to humanize another character, then maybe you haven't fleshed out that character enough to begin with. But yep. I don't mind Joanna Watts in this. I will say I will give this movie a lot of restraint because this movie could have gone down a very not fun road because like one of the first times we meet Lieutenant Bradley, she's climbing up the ladder and like the old admiral is admiring her ass but that's it. That's where it leaves off at. So that scene alone is not to basically exploit how good Lieutenant Carolyn Bradley looks. It's literally there to give you an insight into the admiral's character, and it's left at that. And for that, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm fine with that. I mean, because then you get the look from the captain as well, like, oh dear God. And we're at this point, we're like, okay, is he just like shaking his head at the admiral? Then when we realize that the two of them are in a relationship and no one else knows, maybe except for the first officer, it's like, in hindsight, there are moments in this that are actually cleverly acted and cleverly written. And I can't believe I'm saying that about a script made by Thunder 11.
Yeah, the eye roll said it all.
Right? And
I am so glad they didn't go down that road.
Yeah,
because
they could have.
that would have ruined it if you've got that underlying sort of, I don't know what you would call it, but almost slimy detail.
Yeah.
It would have taken away from what turned out to be not so bad a movie.
Yeah. And that's it. And dear listeners and dear Thunder 11, I know I've been kind of poking fun at the name a little bit, but when I say that you actually made a really good asylum film, I'm very, very genuine here. Like I was expecting the worst this Mocktober, and this movie rolls around and I'm like, I am not second guessing the choice of making Mocktober happen, because this film is actually better than I thought it was going to be, and actually pretty damn good. And the fact that the audience likes it better than Battleship, bravo, sir. Bravo. David Polinsky, who played Admiral Hollis, the most useless passive admiral in military history. Your thoughts?
I agree with you 100%. He was so useless. It was amazing. Like, I'm not sure why they made him just so incredibly useless, but he was. And then he was there for a little bit at the beginning, and then all this stuff is going on and he just disappears. Makes you wonder what bunker he was hiding in. Like, it's like, what? You're supposed to be an admiral. You're supposed to be the one, making the big decisions. And here you are scurrying off and hiding away, just being totally useless.
Yeah. I mean, in any other military-themed movie, the admiral is coming in and relieving the captain of command because they're on the verge of world war, and that can't happen. And no, he's just like, are you sure you want to do this? We have to do it. All right, I'm going to go below decks and chill out for a little bit. There's an arcade down there, and I'm a pinball wizard. That's pretty much what they did. And then every now and then he'd pop up. It's like, are we dead yet? Nope. Cool. Are you still sure you want to do this? Yep. Okay. I got another quarter on the machine. I'm next. That's pretty much how Admiral Hollis feels in this. They could have just simply had the opening scene, turn him into an idiot, and then have him say, okay, I'm going to fly over while you sail the ship across the ocean back to America, and I'll meet you on the other end. That's all they needed to do. You did not need Hollis on the plane or on the boat.
All they needed to do was not hire him in the first place. They could have put some of that money into their special effects because it was a useless character.
But here's the thing. You could have had Hollis fly back to Washington because he had to be there for whatever reason as the ship left dock. And then he gets called in as a character reference for Captain Winston. So you have at least more than two people in the conference room in Washington trying to save the world. That would at least given Admiral Hollis something to do other than go hide below decks.
Yeah, maybe. 2020 on the vision, on the writing. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There are some good things in here that are 2020 actually really good. And then there's some other characters that could have used a little bit more. Give them something else to do other than just chill out below decks.
Yeah, there was a lot of chilling going on by some of those characters.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Nikki McCauley, who played Dr. Julia Flynn. Now, this is the person that is in charge of the museumification of the ship and actually is very instrumental in getting them to an operational, given that they don't have the technology at hand, level of status. Your thoughts on Dr. Julia Flynn?
She's my hero. Seriously. She's smart. She's spunky. She butts in when she knows she's got information that's going to be helpful, regardless of the captain's rather, put down. But yeah, she did what needed to be done. Without her, they were under the waves in no time flat.
I think it also helps too that she's not military. You know,
exactly.
She's not in uniform, so she can bring a bit of a spunkier attitude. She can bring a more eager want in order to be able to do the things outside of kind of like the military. Like, she's not necessarily under the command of Captain Winston, but Winston also recognizes that she is an invaluable resource at this point because she knows where everything is, because her father was on that ship.
Yeah.
You know, was crewed on it back in the day. And she knows the boat. She's always wanted to be part of the ship, kind of thing. And this is her way of preserving her father's legacy in the middle of an alien invasion, albeit. But you needed someone like that. And it added a bit more of a positive attitude that allowed you to get past some of the characters in their rank. There's that scene where they're looking for the VCR, which every ship should have a VCR. every home that has a podcast should have a VCR so we can watch some of these old films. But we get a little bit more of insight into the lieutenant as well. We get to humanize Carolyn Bradley a little bit at that same moment. So, you know, I think that's why I think the lieutenant is a good humanizing factor for Captain Winston, because she was humanized by Dr. Julia Flynn.
Yeah, that was the best part of her performance, was that those scenes with her and Julia. That was really, it made it much better because she was more real at that point.
Because she was allowed to be. Yeah, exactly. Dr. Flynn was kind of like this safe space for other people on the ship to be able to kind of breathe a little bit and kind of refocus and get to know the person rather than the rank, which is always a tough thing to do when you're dealing with a military-based film. You know people in their ranks and you know the chain of command, but we don't know them necessarily as people. Dr. Flynn allowed us to meet some of the characters rather than just their rank.
Yeah, absolutely.
Devin McGee, who played Lieutenant Commander Juarez. Now, this is the guy who led the quote-unquote SEAL Team 6 to the vessel the first time there. So, your thoughts?
Really? You're asking me to think about that. I mean, he did what they told him to do. I mean, it wasn't the actor's fault, really. I mean, he did have a prominent piece to do. That was the thing about that character. He had to go in and, get the lay of the land, take the pictures, that sort of thing. So he accomplished that, like the character accomplished that. But, yeah, I mean, it could have been anybody doing that. There was nothing special other than what the character had to do.
Yeah.
Like,
to quote Worf, he died well.
Yes.
He died very well.
Yeah.
And I do like that little aspect where he actually cut himself open to put the film canister in to protect it from the heat or the radiation or whatever the case may be, so they could get the film back to the ship, or at least have a chance for that. I think I'm going to give Devin McGee and everyone else who was on the, for lack of a better term, the Star Trek Away mission at this point.
Yeah.
Because they all should have just been, wearing red. Most of those scenes were filmed seemingly green screen. So I have a big respect for actors who can act against nothing in a room full of nothing and make it seem plausible. And then trust that the graphics team and the CGI team will have your back and be able to make it look real, which is even more daunting when you have a film with a $1 million budget. But that being said, I'm giving the team as a whole a lot of levity because they acted against nothing and had to make something real out of it. And I think in this case, and that's more probably because of the story and the way the story played out, is that they actually did a decent job playing against nothing.
Yeah. I would definitely. I'm not faulting them, their acting or whatever. Just the whole. How can I put it? Just the whole vibe was a bit off, and that's probably because, like you say, they were acting against nothing. That they did their best with what they had. I had a whole real lot of trouble with those scenes of them supposedly being on top of this ship with the water going by and everybody's whispering.
Yeah. Oh, God.
It's like, give me a break here. You're going at a gazillion miles an hour. Water's going everywhere. And you're whispering to each other so you're not heard inside. That doesn't work for me. You should have been yelling your lungs out because nobody could hear you.
Yeah. I mean, you could also argue the same thing about Interstellar and when they're on that water planet and people were having trouble actually making out what they were saying. And the whole purpose for that is because in a water world like that, when you have a gigantic, wall of water coming at you, you're not going to be able to hear much of anything. So at least with Interstellar, it made sense. Here, okay, I'm willing to, suspend disbelief a little bit, and maybe the ship has a whisper drive so you can hear yourself a little bit. I don't know. I'm not an alien specialist. The other problem though with those scenes, and we'll get to this now since it seems to be the perfect time for it, is that one of the things about this film that makes it actually really good is that they shot on an actual ship in order to be able to give those scenes. This isn't like, again, I mentioned when we covered Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus, and you had a room with funky lighting in it and lots of things with blinky lights and buttons, and we're not quite sure what anything does, and people just stand there and stare at things. This isn't that. They were actually on the USS North Carolina, which is a museum ship. Mm-hmm. So they actually shot on a real ship. There is something so refreshing about a film that shoots on location. I recognize that the ship is not going anywhere when they're filming on it. I can suspend disbelief, even though the flag flapping in some of those scenes is so freaking fake and so bad,
and flags that we had no idea what they were.
But exactly, right? But the thing is, the CGI, and I appreciate it. It's a $1 million budget film. I can accept that and live with it. But this film stands out from some of the other mockbuster films that the Asylum has produced because it was shot on location, on a real ship. And the fact that it was on the USS North Carolina, which is in itself a museum ship, and the ship they're supposed to be on is destined to be a museum ship. Like, this is smart production management.
Yeah, no, that worked out fine. The only that, like, the working on the ship, I knew that they'd actually filmed it on the ship, which was good.
Yes.
Which was really good. But when they did the exterior shots with the big guns, that was very different from the vibe you were getting when they were in the interior. I don't know. Those shots were probably not. They were more constructed.
Yeah, it's almost like they took the actual guns or whatnot from the ship and then kind of 3D modeled them and then manipulated those.
Exactly. So it kind of threw you off. I mean, I noticed that like right away, and it was like, that I don't like. I mean, because they were obviously in a ship. There was no two ways about that.
Oh, exactly.
But those exterior shots could have been better. Could have been better.
Could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
Since we're still on the boat, Sean Patrick Smith, who played First Officer Bryant, this is the guy that knows about Winston and the lieutenant. He is the number one, as we would say in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on him?
Yeah, he was good. I mean, it would have been nice to have seen a little bit more of him, I think. We only got sort of brief glimpses here and there. And I was looking up the actor and was like, what has this guy done? Like, where did he come from? Like, turns out that he's actually an English teacher.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, he's an English teacher somewhere in the States. I think it's in New England somewhere. And, he's also an author. Like, he writes, he's an English teacher. And I guess once in a while he dabbles his toes into a little bit of acting. So I don't know whether he knew someone who was on the production and they invited him to be there or not. But I just He's not like he has a big, long filmography. He doesn't. So, and I thought he did, when I was reading all that, I thought, well, you know what? For a guy who's not definitely not a professional actor, I think he's done some stage work a bit earlier on, but this isn't his, his bread and butter, shall we say. He did a pretty okay job, and I think I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that character. Give the guy a few more lines, like, let us get to know this guy.
Yeah.
Because he's obviously a good guy, because he's covering up for his commander and helping him.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, it's not like he's covering up for the captain because of something nefarious.
No.
He's covering up a relationship.
Yeah, he's protecting him.
Exactly. And that makes the character even better. And again, also humanizes Captain Winston. I just love this story, though, because now you're telling me that there's hope that I will eventually get my dream one day of playing a news anchor or reporter in some sci-fi type film.
Yep.
Right?
No doubt.
I just want to be Captain Exposition on the anchor desk one day. Dear Asylum, if you are ever looking for someone to play a news anchor or news reporter just so they can drop a bunch of exposition, please, for the love of God, this has been one of those bucket list items. Please, that would be fantastic. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's mutant zombies from the other hood. I'm in. Just count me in. Whoo! Carl Weathers, who played General McCracken, who clearly got a day's work, just had to show up at a ballroom, sit around for a little bit, say a few lines, and then call it a day. Your thoughts on him?
I love Carl Weathers. I always have. It's pretty much like you say. I mean, I think he was there for name only.
Yeah.
It wasn't that character had a whole lot to do. He really didn't, except trying to keep the annoying politician out of the way. I don't even know. He did his job. Carl Weathers would always do his job. There's no ifs, ands, or buts there, but, there wasn't enough of him. They didn't give that character enough to work with.
No.
Nothing to sink his teeth into.
And that's the thing. As I'm, going through his filmography, and I'm just there's long stretches at points where, yes, he did American Warships, but, and was doing some TV work around that time, but the big roles weren't really around. I mean, this film came out in 2012. The following year, he was in a film called, and I'm not even kidding you on this, Sheriff Tom versus the Zombies. And it was
more zombie movies,
but it was as a cameo, and he was President Weathers. So that's kind of fun as well. The last actual film that he did was as the voice of Combat Carl in Toy Story 4.
Right.
This, of course, let's not forget The Mandalorian, because that's freaking awesome. And he was fantastic in that.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where you have to think that the role was written first and set at that level or that amount of usage. And then they get their hands on Carl Weathers, and it's like, oh, do we have to rewrite this and flesh out the character? No, we don't have the time or the budget to flesh out the character. Let's leave it as it is. You have Carl Weathers in your cast, and he provides the gravitas.
Oh, definitely.
For a general. Give him some meat to eat.
Yeah, precisely.
He's on screen. He's a gem. You smile when he's on the screen because he's freaking Carl Weathers. And it wasn't a meaty role. And I wish they had flushed that. Give him more to do, because really it was him and the Secretary of Defense in what looked like some little hotel ballroom that they put a few TVs up. They pointed at things, looked at the phone, and then grimaced about how the world is going to end. That's about it.
Yeah, you've about nailed it.
Yeah, but this is where, had you actually had the Admiral flying back to the States earlier and providing character of, we have no point of reference of how the General would be able to vouch for the Captain.
Mm-hmm.
This is where the Admiral... the General can sit there and say, I know who to talk to about this. And then bring the Admiral in because he's in town. And then we have that. I mean, maybe I just want more Carl Weathers.
Probably.
Finally, Elijah Chester, who played the Secretary of Defense Alter. sharing the room with Carl Weathers. Your thoughts?
I really disliked that character at first. He was the ultimate pain in the ass politician. Pardon my language. But, he was being a real a-hole.
Well, the minute he walks in and it's like, tell me what we got. And then he starts buttoning up his jacket like he's trying to look all manly. You're in a room with Carl Weathers. You are not looking manly against Carl Weathers, but you go on, you try. I get it. It's what the character would do. But yeah, no, the thing is, it's not like they made the SecDef bad. It's not like they made him annoying. It's not like they made him power hungry. They just made him there. He was basically like the secretary to the president at this point. Yeah,
basically. And he did manage to show a little bit more when things got tough as they went along, right?
Yeah.
So I lost a little of the dislike for the character. He managed to pull his head out of his butt, so.
And that's the funny thing too. I find it interesting that with Captain Winston and with the Secretary of Defense, we meet them and we're not exactly on their side. We're not enamored with their character, and they grow on you a little bit.
Yep.
And that I think is part and parcel to the writing and the evolution of the story as well. And this is one of those things where if you go back to the first week of Mocktober, when we talked about Transmorphers, that film had a barely put together plot and way worse CGI. And I'm not saying the aliens in this film are any better than the robots in Transmorphers. They're about at the same level. But this film actually has a very cohesive storyline and plot progression. And say what you will about anything of this film, it actually is a decent action film that you don't feel lost and you don't feel like things aren't there that aren't supposed to be there and that aren't there that should be there. Like, for all intents and purposes, American Warships should have been able to stand on its own 2 feet as a film on its own.
Yeah. But I will disagree with you a little bit on the aliens. I actually liked the fact that the aliens that they portrayed were not humanoid figures.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they got out of the comfort zone of sticking some guy in an alien suit, and they obviously did it with CGI, but it was a creature that, you could readily recognize as being a threat and being an intelligent threat and being completely different from humans. So they wouldn't have anything compatible going on there. The fact that they did that made it a little bit more real, I think.
Yeah, and I think the explanation of the aliens, and again, major plot point about to drop here. So again, if we've convinced you to watch American Warships and you don't want this spoiled for you, pause the show and then come back and visit us when you've watched the movie. And if you've done that now, welcome back. But the aliens themselves thrive in a radiation-filled environment. So the whole raison d'etre for doing what they're doing is to get the world superpowers to start dropping nukes on each other, thereby irradiating the planet, thereby, for lack of a better term, terraforming the planet into an environment that actually suits their species. So in realizing that, you actually have proper motive rather than, ooh, spooky alien shows up on Earth once. No, there's a reason behind what they're doing. And there's a purpose for the way they're actually going about it, because they can't just come in and drop nuclear bombs on it because they probably don't have them, right? But their home environment is an irradiated home world, and this is how they're going to do that on Earth and create a new home for their species. It makes sense.
Yes, it was actually logical.
Like, it feels like it makes more sense than Battleship did. In some form or another.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but the Asylum actually had a very smart story on their hand. They had a decent cast to pull it off. The action was good. The shooting on the USS North Carolina was a fantastic, smart move and gave the film a bit of realistic grit to it.
Yeah.
That you couldn't replicate in a studio. Damn it, Asylum, you did a good job.
How often do we say that?
I was thoroughly impressed with this film. It is not as bad as, just because you see the words The Asylum on it, don't back away from it. There are some gems in that catalog. I mean, remember how everyone loved Sharknado when it came out, right? It was one of those, oh dear God, what the hell is this insanity? And then they went like 5-6 films or whatever afterwards, right? And then it just became almost a parody of itself. I remember watching it at one point. I can't remember which sequel it was. I'm like, wait, Tara Reid has superpowers now? What the hell's going on?
That was the last one.
One of these days we're going to do Shark Month. And it's literally going to be Sharknado and then like Two-Headed Shark Attack. And there's going to be like some other Jaws knockoff kind of thing. But if the quality of that first Sharknado film equals the quality of American Warships, then it makes sense that Sharknado became the thing that it became, because there's some smarts in the writing and some good acting in the cast. All right. So now that we've got to the end of this one, who is your MVP of American Warships?
Julia Flynn.
As played by Nikki McCauley.
Yep.
Yeah, she's mine as well. Like,
there you go. We actually agreed.
I know, right? Rare occasion. But the thing is, she's the character. She feels like us. And, you know, you say you like the idea of a CGI monster, but you also watch Doctor Who. So we're used to the rubber suit monsters here. The thing, though, is that with Doctor Who, the companion is supposed to be us, the viewer. In this case, Dr. Julia Flynn feels like she's us. We're not military watching American Warships. We're just lovers of bad films. Bad, he puts in quotation marks, because it actually is a decent film. But Nikki McCauley gave a fun, plucky, solid performance. The film is better off for her for it. And in a cast that is surprisingly good in a B movie, Nikki McCauley definitely stands out. Mom, thank you so much for going down Mocktober Road and stopping off at the American Warship stop, or dock in this case, I guess it would be.
Yeah.
And don't worry, we'll bring you back next year for Mocktober 2, the Mocktober-ing. But now,
anytime,
dear listeners, you guys know the drill. If there is a movie out there that you think is unfairly maligned or is just so bad that there is no way in the ocean that we can find anything good to say about it, hit us up on social media at NotThatBadCast, or go to our website at notthatbadcast.com. And while you're there, make sure you check out our other shows, including There Can Only Be One and Spin Shuffle Skip, if you like a little bit of music. Until next time, that's my mom. I'm Jay. You guys are awesome. This is It's Not That Bad, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Take care.
The Kimi Kato Show, featured on Pantheon Podcasts.
The Kimi Kato Show is a weekly exploration of Japanese pop culture in all its facets. Kimi and Jeremiah, as hosts, delve into various aspects of Japanese culture, including music, food, fashion, and film, offering listeners a comprehensive and entertaining look at what makes Japanese pop culture unique and intriguing. It is your invitation to Japan.
Hey everybody, I'm Dan. I'm Doug. We're in the band Hoobastank.
Hi, I'm Takato Miyake, working for Suntory Global Spirits.
Hello, I'm Sincere from Ryusenkei.
Hello guys, this is Masata Kumi.
This is Chris Hart.
Hi, I am Sugizo. You are listening to Kimi Kato Show. Thank you.
Kimi Kato Show is brought to you by Evolve Entertainment Network, Pantheon Podcasts, and Radio Candy Media.